Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Small Talk. I am going to continue with my previous lesson that we were talking about what the solution is for all the problems, economic crashes that we've been facing, the Federal Reserve, the IMF, the central bank, and how we need to have decentralized economy and decentralized financial system, and what is the solution. And I did give a little hint that solution lies in sound money, or in this case, I think it lies in Bitcoin. And I know I'm going to lose lots of my viewers. I don't have that many viewers to begin with, but the few that I have, I'm going to lose some of them because those of you who are skeptical about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency in general, they're going to say, well, that's a scam, it's a Ponzi scheme, there's lots of risk, it's very volatile, etc., etc., which is all true, that it is very volatile. Could it be a Ponzi scheme? I don't think so, and I will explain it to you in a minute. And is it a scam? No. Can it just disappear one day? It's a possibility, yes. The risks are there, but whenever I look at the fundamentals of Bitcoin, I feel like it's one of the kind currency that has existed, which has never existed before. And I think this is the era where we should be open to embracing these kind of technologies. And those of you who are Muslim, I know lots of Muslims think that Bitcoin is haram. And I think the main reason is because it's volatile, it's risky, and people think it's considered gambling, and gambling is haram in Islam. Haram means prohibited, not allowed. And that's probably why most Muslims are very skeptical to invest in Bitcoin. And when I say Bitcoin, I only mean Bitcoin. I'm not talking about any other cryptocurrencies, and I'll tell you later on the video. Maybe I'll make a separate video on the rest of the cryptocurrency, why I don't advocate them. So why do I think Bitcoin is the solution to our problems? Here is the reason why I think it's the solution. If you remember my very first video where I talked about what is sound money, and what are the main characteristics of money and what makes money valuable. If you look at Bitcoin, it has all of those characteristics and then some. It's actually better than gold, than barley, wheat, rice, and all those products that could be sound money. It has all of those characteristics and then some additional characteristics. It's even better than all of those sound monies. And I will give you the list one by one. So first thing we talked about was that the sound money needs proof of work. Bitcoin was actually designed to be one of the most scarce digital assets which people would own. And it was designed to be decentralized, so no one person or one entity or group of individuals can control it. Because when the control goes in the hands of those individuals, which we already talked about, for example, central bank, the government, or the Federal Reserve, then it causes so much inequality in the society. So the Bitcoin was designed because whoever designed it, was obviously sick and tired of the current financial system, and he wanted to create, I don't know if it's one person or group of people, I don't know, because he's still anonymous and nobody knows what he looks like. And rightfully so, he's probably keeping his identity hidden because of, if he was alive, most likely government would have probably assassinated him or something, as they always do. But Bitcoin was designed in such a way that nobody can control it. No one individual, group of individuals, or one person can control it and then have so much power, just like our regular fiat currency. And also, there's going to be only 25 million Bitcoins in the world that will exist, period. There will be no more Bitcoin after that. So it's very scarce. And remember, we talked about the Bitcoin has to have proof of work. It has to be scarce. It's not going to be unlimited. It has to retain its value and need to have store of value. It should be transferable between peer-to-peer. There should not be any intermediary needed. And also it should be fungible. So Bitcoin has all those characteristics, but the added characteristics it has is that it can be transferred not only peer-to-peer, but it can be transferred electronically in a fraction of a second without even us being there present. So, and those who may not agree with me, I'll explain to you in a small detail why do I think that it fits all those characteristics. Does it need proof of work? Yes, absolutely. It needs proof of work. What does proof of work means? Means it needs hard work. It needs to have some cost attached to it. It needs to have, um, and it requires work and cost to create sound money, and it needs time. Does Bitcoin fit into all those categories? Yes, it needs high energy, which costs lots of money. It needs like, high functioning computers. It also needs time. It also people need to have intelligence in order for them to mine Bitcoin. Not It's not like you just press a button and there you go, Bitcoin is created. That's not the case. So it needs proof of work. You have to. It's not physical work, but it's mental work. You're using your brain. You have to be smart enough in order for you to be able to mine Bitcoin. Number two is a store of value. Yes, absolutely. If you go back when it was initially started, it was for a fraction of a penny, and look at where has it gone since. Not only that it has retained its value, it has multiplied by thousands, millions times than when it was initially started. So it's a store of value. It's going up in value even higher than the gold prices. The gold isn't even increasing at the same rate as Bitcoin is. Is it fungible? Yes. If you have one Bitcoin and I have one Bitcoin and we exchange our Bitcoin, they're both of equal value. So it's not like my Bitcoin is going to have higher value than yours. So we can exchange our coins and we'll both don't lose anything or make anything. It's going to be of equivalent value. Can it be transferred from peer to peer? Yes, absolutely. Unlike your fiat currency, where when we want to transfer something, there are either 7 or 17 intermediary banks that are involved and they all get their cut. And that too, if you're sending money to some countries which the government doesn't want you to send, then bam, your money is not even going to go wherever you want it to go. It's your hard-earned money and somebody else is controlling it for you. Whereas Bitcoin is peer-to-peer. There's no intermediary involved. With the click of a button and the fraction of a minute, my money is transferred to anywhere across the world and nobody can do anything about it. Nobody can even control my wealth because it's my hard-earned wealth. So not only that it has the characteristics of sound money, but it has added benefit to it because gold, yes, it's sound money, but we can't transfer it electronically. In order for us to transfer gold, even legally, from if I live in the US and let's say I'm going to Pakistan, that's my home country, and I want to carry 10 kilograms of gold, not that I have 10 kilograms of gold, but let's say for the sake of argument, I did have it. Forget 10, even if I have 1 kilogram of gold and I want to take it with me, try crossing through the airport and see what happens to you. Whereas Bitcoin, I can send my entire deposit that I have in Bitcoin, my entire um, portfolio, and nobody can do anything about it. You can see it. The people, I mean, it can be seen, it can be viewed like where it went, but nobody can stop it. Nobody can do anything. Nobody can pull it back. Whereas if it was my sound money, my fiat currency or my regular gold, silver, wheat, barley, real estate. Of course, I can't move real estate anyway. Or barley, wheat, rice, all those form of sound money which require piece of proof of work and which are tangible and which are fungible, which have um, which have sorry, I'm just gonna go blank now. um, which do retain their value. Those are not transferable very easily across the globe. We live in a time where digital currency has become very crucial to us. And when Muslims talk about it, I don't know why they think Bitcoin is haram. It has all the characteristics of sound money, and it fits the economic structure that the Prophet, peace be upon him, had um, put together for the state of Medina, where it's not centralized, it can promote free markets, and not one individual or one person or group of people will have control over it. And that's what Islam preaches, and that's what the Prophet, peace be upon him, preached, because in Islam there has to be equal distribution of wealth to some extent, if not all, if not perfectly. And also we have to look after those who are more vulnerable in the society. In the fiat currency's case, rich keep getting richer and middle class and poor people keep getting poorer. Whereas when it comes to Bitcoin, it's my Bitcoin. I can send you my Bitcoin and purchase something from you, and as a result you can send your fraction of Bitcoin and purchase something from the next person. And because the money is very scarce, we don't have unlimited supply of Bitcoin. It's not like somebody else can print so many digital Bitcoins or mine so many Bitcoins and then just go inflate it in the market. No, it's going to always retain its value and just store its value and increase in value no matter what. So it has all those characteristics that Prophet, peace be upon him, had. In Islam, most people confuse money because of this one hadith where Prophet, peace be upon him, said there's only five kind of money, and he said wheat, barley, uh, rice, salt, and there was one more thing, I forgot that one. So I think people misunderstood this hadith. In my opinion, money can be anything that society deems it to be. For example, during World War II, the cigarette was being used as a form of money, a medium of exchange. At some island, I forgot where I read it, some island they had the seashell, which was being used as money. So whatever people think is valuable wherever they live in the society and they consider this to be money, it can be money. But sound money is something very different because sound money needs to have all those characteristics. And Bitcoin, in my opinion, has all those characteristics. So I'm not a scholar, I'm not a mufti, and I'm not going to sit here and issue a fatwa, a ruling in Islam, but I'm going to give you my insight, what I think and what I have read when I was doing my master's. I took a class of Islamic economics, and it actually talked about how how Islam gives us an economic system and how it should work. So this fits the perfect picture of that Islamic finance, and ultimately it's going to fix all these economic problems that we have in the world. The reason those economic problems exist is because of the unlimited supply of fiat currency. That's not money, that's currency. Money is something different. So in my opinion, Bitcoin has all the characteristics to become the most Sharia compliant form of currency that ever existed on this planet Earth ever before. And Muslims, I think they should accumulate Bitcoin. It's the problem with the Muslims in general that whenever there is a new discovery made or new invention made, there's a fatwa issued. Fatwa is like an Islamic ruling. The scholars of Islam, those of you who don't understand what fatwa is, the scholars of Islam, they just issue a ruling in the light of the hadith and the seerah of the Prophet, and they tell us whether this is permissible or not permissible. So lots of scholars said Bitcoin is haram. And I think it's not their fault. The problem is they don't understand Bitcoin very well, which I don't blame them. It's not their job. They're not the financial analyst, or they're not the economists. They don't understand the in-depth situation of this whole digital asset. And that's why I think they issued these fatwas, just to be on the safe side. So if they don't understand, and if tomorrow it turns out to be that this was something that shouldn't have happened, at least they cover themselves. So therefore, when these kind of fatwas or rulings are issued, I feel like somebody who understands these things in depth and they have studied their faith and the life of their Prophet, they should sit with them and try to educate them. But the problem is Bitcoin is quite complicated. I'm going to give you a very interesting story of myself. In 2016, I believe it was, my brother came to my house. I had heard Bitcoin and I knew there was something called Bitcoin and people are using it and they're becoming very rich. And I knew it was like for a fraction of a penny, then it was a quarter, and then I think it went up to 50 cents. I heard all of those things, but I never looked into Bitcoin. So my brother, my youngest, I only have one brother. I'm the oldest one in the family. And we were five siblings, so he's the youngest one. So there's a huge age difference between me and him. So he came to my house once. It was in, I think, 2015 or 16, if I remember it correctly. And I think one of his friends used to invest money into Bitcoins at the time. And I think Bitcoin was at $400 or $4,000 at the time. And he said to me, you know, my friend was saying you should dig into this. But I was like, it's too much work. I can't go and dig earth and mine it. So he literally thought that to mine Bitcoin, you actually have to mine it like you mine gold and salt and all those things from ground. And I believed. I was like, yeah, it's too much work. If somebody knows what they're doing and that's their business, mining is not easy. That's not my thing. I'm not going to do it. I didn't realize the Bitcoin was actually being mined electronically, digitally, and my brother didn't either until a couple years later when I tried to get into this. I realized, oh my gosh, we were so stupid. So that being said, it's such a new asset that so many people don't. I mean, it's not as new anymore. More and more people are getting aware of this. But again, it's quite complicated if you don't know the basics. So in order for someone to go to a scholar and ask them to issue a fatwa, they obviously have to have someone who's an expert in Bitcoin and who knows the fiqh and the seerah of the Prophet at the same time, like a good practicing young Muslim who understands finance and who understands his faith. He should go and sit down with the scholars and then ask the scholar to issue a ruling based off of the information that he was provided. So I don't blame those scholars. But at the same time, I feel like if scholars are going to issue some fatwa, I think they should try to at least educate themselves a little bit. In fact, I was listening to a very famous scholar of Islam, Yasir Qadi. He's based off of Texas, and he said, I mean, of course, he said that I don't understand the finance and banking system very well. And he said, I'm going to have somebody else, one of his teachers, I think, sitting with him. And he asked him all these questions about the current, the banking system and the interest-bearing loans. Mind it, in Islam, and business based off of interest are prohibited, and they're not halal, they're not allowed, they're not permissible. And he was trying to make people understand why this mufti that he brought to educate people thinks that interest is haram. Okay, I understand interest is haram. It's just given in the Quran. That's good enough reason for me as a practicing Muslim that I'm not going to get involved or try not to get involved in the interest. However, the reason that he presented was when you borrow money from the bank, obviously it's not fair to both parties, because sometimes, let's say you borrowed $100,000, you went and you built a business from scratch and your business is worth millions of dollars now. So bank is not getting what they deserve because they only get back $100,000 and a fraction of the interest, whereas you made millions of dollars with that $100,000. And also it could go the other way, that you borrowed the money, you invested in business, you took a business loss, but bank doesn't care. They're going to get their $100,000 back, and also they're going to get the excess on top of that, like the interest. And it's not some, so it could be unfair both ways. But remember what I talked to you about, how banks work. Bank is never going to go in loss. They're lending you the money that they don't even have, and then they're multiplying it and quad multiplying it and 1,000 times multiplying it. It's like unlimited money that they get. So bank never loses money, and that tells you right there that these muftis, these scholars, they have very minimal knowledge of these things, and that's why when they issue the ruling, sometimes it's very confusing, and people say, well, I don't know. Some people say it's haram, and some people say it's halal. I don't know who to listen to. So you listen to muftis. Yes, they have the deep understanding of the faith, of the deen. But at the same time, know who you're getting the fatwa from. Does he understand the ruling? Does he have the deep knowledge of what he is issuing the fatwa on? I was listening to a scholar and he says Mars is haram. Why? Because if you go to Mars, you could die. And in Islam, suicide is prohibited. You're not allowed to do suicide because you're going to rot in hellfire. Can you imagine? So that shows that they have lack of knowledge when it comes to certain things. When I read Quran, it says, I'm just going to give you the explanation of what it means. I don't know the exact translation. I don't remember top of my head. It just says, beloved are those people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who remember him day and night, sitting, standing, and laying on their sides, and who pay attention to the creation of the heavens and the earth. How can we pay attention to the creation of the heavens and the earth if we don't go and explore these things? So going to Mars is not haram, in my opinion, in Islam, because Quran says to go and explore. And yes, even if your life is taken away in this process, it's part of the process. Those sacrifices have to take place in order for the knowledge to spread and knowledge to be discovered. And that's what we're supposed to do as a Muslim. Our deen starts with the first ayah, read in the name of God. Like acquiring knowledge is the basic fundamentals of our deen. So I'm not saying the muftis are wrong, and I'm not saying the people who get fatwas from the muftis, their skepticism is wrong, but I'm saying you can study the deen yourself, and you can sit down and spend some time and read about those things and try to understand it yourself, and then decide whether the mufti's fatwa was making any sense or not. So in my opinion, Bitcoin is the most Sharia compliant form of currency that existed in the history of mankind. And Muslims need to acquire Bitcoin. They need to hold on to this Bitcoin. As I said, the world economy is going to collapse, and it's going to happen. Trust me, it's not that it's not going to happen. It will happen. And when it happens, you need to make sure that you're secure, your families are secure. Remember, we are the people of downtime preferences. What does that mean? That means we fast in the month of Ramadan. We give charity, 2.5% mandatory charity from our wealth. We do sadaqah, even more charity on top of the mandatory 2.5%. We pray 5 times a day. Why? Because we believe there's a life after death, and we have to be held accountable for our deeds that we do in this world. That's downtime for us. So we're saving our good deeds for our downtime. We are the people and nation for downtime preferences. We're not the people of high time preferences. So we need to have some wealth stored for the time when the world economy collapses and when the currency has no value. That's when your Bitcoin is going to come handy. And trust me, Muslims have had these problems where everything that comes up in the market, in the society, they say it's haram. For example, printing press was haram. Bitcoin is obviously haram. Photography and videography was haram at one point. And that's not too long ago. That's like when I was growing up. Muftis used to issue so many fatwas. No pictures. Oh my God, astaghfirullah. No photos, no videos. Making statues is haram, etc., etc. In fact, I don't know if it's still there, Netflix. I was watching a very interesting video, The Black Gold. It was on Netflix. If it's still there, I would encourage everybody to watch that video. It's very interesting. When the oil was first discovered in Saudi Arabia, obviously a long time ago, same thing happened. People got together and they said, well, we should not touch it because Allah had it hidden for a reason. And if we touch it, we're committing a sin, and it's haram to go underground and take the things from underground, which Allah has not put them on the surface for us. And then other people would say, well, if it wasn't meant to be for us, why would Allah put it there? And if Allah had put it there, He obviously opened it up for us now so we can use it. So there was like argument from both sides. And eventually they decided, after wasting so much time and so much energy and fighting over it, like who's right and who's wrong, finally, of course, they realized that, okay, this is a resource that Allah has put there for us, for the humanity to use, and we should, get benefit from it. And they finally agreed upon it. So it's a very interesting movie. So that's what I'm saying. For some reason, Islamic scholars have always been like this, and they've always given the opinion of every new invention, new discoveries that were made, and they just issue a fatwa. The first fatwa comes out, it's haram, don't touch it. And I think they just want to cover themselves. They just don't even want to know whether it's haram or halal until later on it becomes very popular, and then they just have the basic knowledge, and they'll come back and they'll reissue a fatwa. Oops, we made a mistake, I think it's permissible. So by the time they come back to you, it's already too late for everything, and I don't want you guys to feel that you are left behind. The train has already left. And trust me, train has already left. We're already so late. We're already so behind, but we're still not that far behind, because we still have a long way to go. And if we can start nibbling into the Bitcoins and creating our position, but just remember, don't trade it. Hold on to this, because that's a store of value. That's for our downtimes. So hold on to this and use it when this fiat currency mania will end, which it is going to end, believe it or not. Sooner or later, it has to happen. They cannot fake this entire financial and economic system for too long. It's meant to collapse, and it's going to collapse. And when it does collapse, you have to make sure that as I said, we cannot change the country because we're not that powerful. We don't have a say. Our words don't mean anything. we can control our own finances and our own micro economy inside our own household. And that's what I'm encouraging my viewers to do. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was that the other cryptocurrencies, I do not advocate those, because most of them are not, they're not designed for this purpose as Bitcoin is. Most of them are, those are stable coins. Those are not like Bitcoin type of currency, and those are designed to make those who create them rich, and the rest of the world, again, is going to have the same problem that we have with fiat currency. The fewer are going to become richer. They're going to, those are real Ponzi schemes. Now, some people will say, well, it's very volatile, and yes, but remember, the volatility has gone down in past a few years, 6-7 years, and it's more volatile towards upside, not towards downside. So if you bought a Bitcoin even a few months ago, you would have had doubled your money. 50,000 would have become $100,000, and it's going to go beyond. Imagine if you had $50,000 sitting in your bank, you would have lost value, because currency loses its value over time. So that $50,000 would have reduced in value by now. Whereas Bitcoin, because it's store of value, it has gone up in value. It was very volatile when it first started, and then it has had its moments. Is it risky? Can whoever invented Bitcoin, can they just shut down everything? And yeah, it's a possibility. I'm not saying the risk isn't there. It's there. But are they going to do it? Probably not. But there's a risk everywhere. There's a risk in fiat currency world. When the economy collapses, and I'm talking about U.S. economy, and when that happens, the entire world's economy is going to collapse. Your money is going to be useless. In fact, recently, I think Las Salvador and one other country has switched their currency to Bitcoin, and most of their transactions are being done. That's their strategic reserve, and they're doing all their transactions while using Bitcoin. And the funny thing is, IMF is always writing some nasty articles, and they're issuing statements about Las Salvador. When IMF doesn't like something, trust me, it's good. It's good. I've already talked about the evils of central bank, the evils of Federal Reserve, the evils of IMF, and we all know these institutions were established to make the few at the top very rich. It fills their pockets, and when their pockets are not being filled, of course they're going to issue those statements about those countries who are switching to this sound money, which is digital, which is easily transferable, which has store of value, which needs proof of work, which is scarce. Of course, it's going to make IMF very mad, and they're going to issue these statements. So I think sooner or later, US is going to, we already know that Trump has been talking about, he's very pro Bitcoin, and he was talking about that he's going to have Bitcoin as his strategic reserve. And I think him and Fed doesn't go along very well, which I'm happy, because I feel like the Federal Reserve should not even exist. That's an institution that has too much power, and nobody can even question it. It's not even a government agency or government entity, which is absurd. And they're the one who are running the entire economic and financial system of this country, and ultimately the global economic system. One person or one institution should not have this much power. That's crazy. That's what causes the collapses, because then those people have their own personal interest in it. They're the one who don't want these situations to change, because it's filling their pockets. So we don't want just permissible. Obviously, we want tayyib, wholesome, halal, which is 100% permissible. If anything, when people say Bitcoin is haram, in my opinion, not that Bitcoin is available, and most of the places do accept Bitcoin for transactions, for purchases as well. I feel like in this situation, using fiat currency would be haram, because that's more risky. So if you want to go into that haram and halal game, I would say fiat currency is haram right now, and Bitcoin is that wholesome tayyib product, not just permissible, but 100% authentic, halal, Sharia compliant form of currency that we should be using. So I don't call it just the Islamic ruling. I call it more of like ethical ruling, no matter what faith, religion. I always say that no matter what faith, religion, background you are from, it doesn't matter. Everybody wants the same thing at the end of the day. We all want to put food on our children's table. We all want to pay our bills. And if we're not being able to do that because of the unlimited supply of fiat currency, we need to go to the solutions that exist and try to hold on to it. So please let me know if you have any concerns. Please share your thoughts on the video. Please give me your comments. They're always welcome, because if you don't tell me where you don't understand, I can't explain it to you. And we can talk about this in more detail. Subscribe to my channel, give my video a thumbs up. Until next one, take care and be safe and protect your wealth.